Okay, let's sew some welt pockets. I've got my front pattern piece and my welt pocket pattern piece here in front of me. And you'll notice that on the paper pattern it says make sure that this edge is closest to the hem. So I've gone ahead and cut a little notch for myself so that I know that's the hem edge, the edge that needs to be on the bottom of the pocket. I have marked my welt out on the wrong side of my pocket piece, and I have marked it on the right side of my front piece. And now what we need to do is line up this marking with this marking. So what I like to do, and this is handy to do on an ironing board, is put pins through the corners of the welt on my pocket piece. And then if you are using an ironing board, it's pretty easy to find your corners on your front piece and poke the same pins right into the ironing board at the corners. And then come over and do the same thing on the other side. And then that lets you kind of smooth the fabric into place. Once that's done, you can pull some of those pins and you can just put one pin holding each edge. And you're ready to go to the machine. So what we're going to do at the machine is we're going to sew right around this welt marking. I like to start in the center of one of the longer sides because that gives me an easier place to overlap when I come back around. So let's move over to the machine. And then we're just going to stitch. Now welt pockets need to be really precise, so you want to stop with the needle directly down in that corner and then lift the presser foot, turn your fabric, and stitch right across the next part of the line. It can also be helpful if you need to hand crank the machine when you get close to those corners, just to make sure you end right on the corner. And we're back on the line we started on, so we're just going to sew and overlap a couple stitches. All right, now here is the scary part. You're going to cut through your fabric, including the front of your dress. So what I like to do is pinch up the center of the welt and make a little snip right into the middle through both layers of fabric. And then you're going to cut in a straight line down towards the ends of the welt and then snip into the corners. So it helps to have very sharp scissors that are sharp all the way to the tip for this. And you're getting as close to the stitching in the corner as you can without cutting through it. All right, now it's time to turn the pocket to the wrong side of the dress. So you're going to take all that welt pockety piece and stuff it through to the wrong side of the dress. And now is a good time to press the little seam allowances. You want to press those away from the pocket. Same thing on this side. We're pressing these away from the pocket. And then you can see we've got a hole here in our dress. So the next step, you want to press right along these edges. Now this is important. You want to press and make sure that your pocket is still equidistant. Don't let it bow out like this as you're pressing. Of course, I'm exaggerating here, but you don't want the edges to bow out. That's not going to make a pretty welt. So get right on those edges and then press. Okay, we've got a nicely pressed hole here. So now to form the welt, what we want to do is we're going to take our fabric and we are going to fold it up so that the folded edge is now just barely touching the other edge of the hole. And when you do this, your edges of your front and your pocket are going to magically start to line up. And then you want to press this whole edge. To double check this welt, what I like to do at this point is pin the edges of the welt in place and then flip the whole thing over to the front side just to check and make sure that it looks okay. And even too, you can also press again to get this edge really nicely, sharply creased in there before you stitch it. Okay, so there is our welt. In order to keep the welt in this place, make it hold its place there, we need to again go and stitch around the edges of it. So we're going to take it back to the sewing machine and get your needle really close to the seam line and then stitch all the way around. If you like decorative top stitching, you can switch to a different color thread because this does show on the front side of your dress. So sometimes it can be fun to play with something different here. And just like before, we come back around the corner, we're going to overlap 1 or 2 stitches before we cut the thread and pull this out of the machine. So there is the front of your welt pocket. Snip off any stray threads on the front, and let's turn it over to the wrong side to complete it. The last step we need to do here is we need to fold this edge down to form the pocket back. Now the side edge and the front edge are going to get caught in the seams when we sew the fronts together and when we sew them to the backs. So you just want to fold it, pin it, and we're only going to sew this bottom edge here. That's the edge that we need to make sure is finished on this step. And these pins I'm just going to leave there to hold everything in place till I attach the other parts of the dress. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go stitch straight across here on the serger. That's one way to finish the raw edges so that I don't end up with these threads that keep falling out. However, if you don't have a serger, you can also use, these are pinking shears, and they are scissors that they have like zigzag teeth. If you cut, you can see they're making a bunch of bias cuts, and that also prevents the fabric from fraying any further. So pinking shears are a really great way if you don't have a serger to go ahead and finish an edge. So you would pink this edge and then stitch it on a regular machine if you didn't have a serger. There are some other seam finishing options listed in the pattern, and if you like any of those better, you're welcome to try those as well. So over here on the serger, let's finish this bottom seam. And you can see the serger trims the fabric slightly as it loops thread around the edges. So this isn't going to fray anymore because it's got this thread looped around the edges. Because of the way a serger works, you also have to go past the edge of the fabric. You have to chain off to finish and get your fabric out of the machine. And then you can cut those chains off because these edges are going to get caught in other seams. And that is a completed welt pocket. You can see on the front now, if I put my hand in, I've got a pocket. Now that we've got that done, let's see how to finish assembling the front of the dress.